Thanks for staying. Now joining me live from United States to discuss this war of international concern is a global affairs analyst, Kunle Fallow. It's good to have you on at this time. Now, despite ceasefire, Israel has launched strikes across Gaza. Civilians in parts of north and south have been told to evacuate. Now, is there no end in sight to this war?
Unfortunately, with the deadlock in the conversations between the warring factions, the Israeli side and the militant group, the Hamas, unfortunately, the truce didn't hold as we would expect it to be. But the good part is at least they had some form of ceasefire momentarily for humanitarian reasons that gave the opportunity for the people of Gaza or Palestinians living in Gaza to evacuate the crisis-prone areas. But nonetheless, conversations and negotiations are starting to be, unfortunately, going on the left side, which is not supposed to be. But we will continue to advocate for continued pressure from the Israeli side and, the Middle Eastern negotiators to pressuring and continue to negotiate with all the warring factions to ensure that they finalize and have a final and a lasting solution to the war going on in that region.
Now, the U.S. is sending red lines for Israel as ceasefire ends. What do you make of this development?
Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been doing pretty well. He had gone to those places at least 4 times to make that trip to continue to negotiate and broker peace between the people of Israel and Gaza. But nonetheless, he's not the only one doing all these negotiations. The people of Qatar, the government of Qatar, and concerned countries in the Middle East, because this is potentially could escalate to a very big war in the Middle East, and it's gladdening to see that concerned countries in the Middle East are coming up and standing up to talk and try to broker peace. But nonetheless, all hands must be in deck to ensure that they seem to be a final and a lasting solution. Unfortunately, people are still dying. There are over about 2 million people in Gaza. About 80% of them are displaced. Hospitals are being bombarded, and there seems to be a lot of outcry in the Middle East, and concerned people there are feeling the plight of Gazans. And don't forget, the Hamas is the one that orchestrated this attack in October the 7th, and this has been an international crisis for everyone. But as it is, we'll just continue to advocate for peace and let common sense just reign.
About the humanitarian aid for civilians in Gaza, what do you think about this?
The aid will, and that's another sour part of the conversation. There were humanitarian aid going into Gaza to help and to help assist those civilians who have been unfortunately hit by airstrikes from Israel. But as it is, the Hamas group are allegedly using public infrastructure and such as hospitals and civilian residents as a shield, and they're storing weapons and munitions in those areas. So it's very, very extremely difficult to separate the civilians and the Hamas insurgents. It's hard to separate them, and that's extremely difficult, because if the international community is beckoning on the Israeli side to respect international humanitarian law and war laws during a wartime like this, how do you differentiate or separate the Hamas militant group and ordinary civilians when they're using them as a shield and they're allegedly operating in public infrastructure such as hospitals. And that's unfortunate, and that's a very thin line that the Israeli side needs to cross. But nonetheless, we will continue to talk about protecting the lives of innocent civilians in Gaza. They're all the ones that are homeless, displaced, hungered, uh, devastated by this unfortunate incident.
All right, thanks indeed for your time with us. Global Affairs analyst Kunle Fallow was sharing his thoughts with us on the Israel-Hamas war. Thanks for your time with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And moving on, dozens of protesters waved the Palestinian flags and held